series that I'm going to edit, make into one big video. We're going to go over crate etiquette in this video. And I just want to kind of talk about some stuff before we get started on the hands-on. I wanted to record me working through Clooney's, what I call threshold etiquette, while he just got here, because Hootie was perfect. Like, I didn't even really have to work on, like, being appropriate, which is very, very unusual. That is very uncommon to see, as dogs just naturally kind of having, like, respect and boundaries. And that's exactly how I would define Hootie. Clooney's the opposite. He's pushy. So he's anxious. So when you put those two things together, he's very, he's the type of dog that can make you feel anxious. In other words, his energy can kind of, take over the room and make everyone feel like they need to hurry up. Let's go outside. Let's go for that walk. Come on. Come on. Come on. You see? So that feeds into the room. Everyone feeds off of that. And so a lot of what I'm going to be focusing on with Clooney is, how to be patient and how to wait and how to calm himself down. He is one of those dogs who we're probably going to need to do some videos on self-soothing too, because Clooney's the kind of dog who really needs to learn how to calm himself down and not rely on a toy or a bone or something in order to make himself feel better. He's just self-soothing. And we can use crate etiquette as a form of self-soothing and also create lots of rules and boundaries and get that brain to start becoming less anticipatory and pushy and more patient. So I don't think I've really talked to you guys very much about crates. I know that I mentioned it to Cynthia before both of your dogs started this program. And I know a lot of people kind of think of crates as this period of time where a pup needs to be potty trained. And then once they're no longer destructive, the crate is removed. But dogs are den animals. This is genetic. This is a biological thing. And so when we don't provide dens, they'll seek them out themselves. So if you've ever seen your dogs, like kind of after they've worn themselves out, maybe start to get underneath tables or put themselves in corners between couches and walls, or maybe sometimes they'll go in closets or under beds. But dogs seek dens. And so I see it all the time with dogs who aren't crate trained. Or at least who don't continue to have a crate in their life. And so instead of asking them to find their own safe place, I give it to them. Here's your crate. This is going to be your den. Not only is this den safe and consistent and a part of your everyday life, but if I move or travel or, I can really cut down the anxiety by having that crate foundation still in their life. It's a great place for fears like thunder, lightning, gunshots, fireworks, anything that might upset a dog. A crate, establishing a really safe crate foundation will actually really help a dog soothe themselves when something traumatic, like the big fireworks and stuff, are set off. So there's a number of reasons why a crate is super important. On a biological level, it's fulfilling to them, whether, it's the human emotion and guilt that gets us into thinking that we're caging our animals. But, if dogs didn't have humans, they would make their own den, and that's where they would stay. They would want to be in an enclosed area. So it just makes sense to me that we would fulfill that in a dog inside their home and give them a den. If you want this transition home to be successful, you're going to have to purchase crates again if you don't already have them. If you have them, get them back up. Put them in a really quiet space. It can be your bedroom, if that's where it's the most quiet, or a spare bedroom, or an office, or something where there's the most minimal amount of traffic. And then I want you to make sure it's not set up next to a window so they can't look out and bark. Preferably somewhere, where they can't hear a bunch of things either, if that's possible, like people walking by, cars driving by, stuff like that. I don't know what kind of crates you have, but you don't want them to be so big that it's like twice the size of your dog and they have an excessive amount of room to move around. Dens are supposed to be a little bit more snug. So I'm actually thinking about moving Clooney into a plastic crate because he moves around a lot. And that plastic crate is a little more enclosed, so I think it might help his movement. But I'm really trying to create like this is a safe place, but it feels more like a den, and this is where you go to relax and sleep. So that's my spiel about the crate, about what you're going to be doing with the crate inside the home, and why it's so important. But on a bigger level, this is not the only way you're going to be able to follow through with the training. Clooney and Hootie cannot be around each other for a while when they first come home. They have heavy influences over each other. I don't know the lengths of them yet, but dogs know their same language, and so they're going to feed off of each other. And this is exactly why Hootie has started barking. Hootie does not strike me as the type of dog who would bark if he were a dog, like if you didn't have Clooney. So their influence is strong. So the idea of not having them together when they first come home is so that you can start to influence them, so that you have a relationship that establishing a relationship with each dog individually allows you to have access to their brain, so when they're together, their influence doesn't override your authority. If these two dogs were my dogs, I would not have them together until I felt 100% certain in each dog's responsiveness towards me. And once I felt like I could recall them and place them and walk them, and I had this really solid sense of a relationship with them where there was a lot of respect and the conversation came easily between the two of us, then I would start integrating the two of them together. So that's what I'm going to recommend. I have worked with lots of dog families who have multiple dogs. The people who don't worry so much about getting the program over with as fast as possible. Instead, settle in and kind of accept the fact that this is going to be your new life for a while. Those types of clients take their time and slowly integrate. And we're talking it can take months for integration. And when they do that, it's reported back to me that that both dogs are still, even when together, still have the same level of respect and attentiveness towards their owners. And that's what I want. I want each one to have a valuable relationship with each of you so that when they're together, they don't override that influence and feed off all their bad habits. Feed each other their bad habits. So, in the cases in which I worked where there's multiple dog homes and people didn't crate as much and didn't separate like they should, regression was, in my opinion, dramatic, although of course everyone's always stoked because e-collars are so effective, but it's just a tool, and it's a tool to communicate clearly. It would be great if the tool didn't have to be used heavily for the rest of their lives, and the way to do that is to build that relationship first with each individual dog, build it to the point of ease, and then the e-collar starts to fade away and you still have reliability. But when you start to cut corners too soon, this is where dogs will start to learn to manipulate, and then you have to use tools forever. All the time, forever. And that's what I see, is these people are very dependent on those tools. It's for everything is still years down the road, heavily required, lots of anxiety, the dogs feed off of each other, don't listen, So I've seen both sides of the spectrum, and I kind of wanted to give you a heads up as to what that's going to look like. And I know that that's probably hard to hear, but that's why you hired me, is because I know what to do to get your dogs to an amazing place, a place you might not have even knew that they were capable of. But it is going to take a lot of follow through on your guys' part in order to maintain that and for that to become their new habit. You know, because the maintenance part, the training part on your part is actually about creating a consistent lifestyle with them, so that you're actually developing a new habit, a new lifestyle, a new, you know, everything they do now is a habit. So instead of it being the chaos that you experience sometimes now, it's actually exactly the opposite of what you are going to train them to establish, and then that becomes their new habit. That's how black and white dogs can be. But it takes consistency, and it takes patience, and it takes going slow, and the hardest part for my clients is it takes emotionally detaching yourselves from the situation when you start to feel guilty or bad for the dogs, because that seems to be a common thing, and understand that this is just what's best for them in order to get where they need to get the fastest, and also the most reliably. So it's not the easiest process. I, you know, obviously have seen hundreds of clients go through this process, and each one struggles with it in their own way, but it's almost always on an emotional level. And I think the reason why dogs actually excel and do so much better under my care versus when they go home after weeks of it kind of starts to unwind a little bit is because I actually my emotions know that it's better for them, so it actually encourages me to continue to do it, because I see the growth and I see how they don't have as much stress. You know, I have better influence over them. We have a better relationship. We start to actually bond and connect in a way that's not just through affection, but actually through communication and eye contact and all these other beautiful things. Freedoms expand because they're doing so well, so then the dog appreciates you even more, you know. So my emotional switch is, this program is awesome, and I would do it for every single dog, because it creates such a wonderful, clear-headed dog. And so I think that's what gets me super far, because everyone else thinks that dogs should just be out with them all the time and constantly interacting and constantly talking to them and petting them and keeping them stimulated. And unfortunately, that's actually not good for dogs. So the guilt starts to kick in, and then you want to start to go back to your old ways sooner than the dog is ready for it, and that gives them this kind of loophole, this opportunity to go, you know, this stuff's not quite a habit yet. There's some things that are still not quite cleaned up, and my owner's starting to back off, and I'm going to seize this moment and start going back to, you know, digging or barking or pulling on the leash or, you know, what have you. So that's kind of my spiel on the emotional side of this and what it's going to look like, and how it's going to kind of feel going into like keeping your dog separate and having them in crates throughout the day, even at night, and then also intermittently throughout the day. So not the easiest pill to swallow. I think I told Cynthia over the phone, I typically see dogs start to transform around the 8-week mark. Your dogs are going to be here for 2 weeks. So try to think of this more as you have 6 weeks is not a very long time. If you think about their lifespan, which could end up, you know, being 10, 12, 15 more years of these two. Six weeks is really not that long of a time period if you really think about it. So if you can just kind of tell yourself, like, changing a lifestyle and a diet is hard, but I can commit myself to this for 6 weeks. You know, you're gonna find your money is extremely well spent. So teetering, you know, and kind of backfalling, or, you know, cutting corners, that's going to backfire, and you're still going to have dogs that are better than they were, but they'll kind of always be these behaviors that are left unmanaged or untrained. So that's my spiel on that. The other reason for the crate, there's a couple more reasons for crate training. One is sleep. Dogs need about 20 hours of sleep a day, and they're not really likely to get that without a crate. Especially younger dogs. You know, they're going to be more inclined to, every time you get up, they're going to get up with you, or look out the window to bark for things, or maybe they don't have to look out the window, but they can just be laying in a dog bed, and then once they hear something outside, they spring up into action. You know, there's a lot of restlessness that goes on in a day-to-day household with untrained dogs, and when you don't have a crate, to add to that, then the anxieties actually start to increase because they're not getting enough sleep. And if you two know anything about sleep, sleep deprivation creates a lot of unwanted behaviors in humans, and it's the same is true with dogs. The difference with dogs is they need a lot more sleep than we do, 18 or 20 hours. And so this is probably where Clooney's coming from. He's very, very anxious. And I can tell it's not just from being somewhere new. You know, he was like that in your car, and you guys expressed that yourselves when you dropped him off. And so, knowing that he has a lot of anxiety, you know, this is probably tied to not getting enough sleep. And then, so he hears things all the time. He's edgy. You know, it's like, why are you barking? I don't even understand what you're barking about. It's literally like someone who is an insomniac. They start to get paranoid and sensitive and emotional, and you know, they don't make good decisions. So that's probably where a lot of this is coming from. So that crate is going to be important for both dogs, but it's going to be absolutely crucial for Clooney. And so it hopefully will also alleviate some of the stress that you're dealing with inside the home too, if you look at it that way, because you know, he might not, if you can spend some more time putting him in his crate for a while so that he can really learn to sleep and relax, you know, you're not going to have to deal with as many outbursts of barking that you seem to. So that's one positive side. For him, the positive side is that if you utilize your crate heavily, he is going to catch up on all the sleep that he's lost. And that's another thing he needs. He doesn't just need the daily dose of sleep, but he needs actually some catch up on sleep, because he's really missing that part. So sleep is essential. And then the other thing is that consistency, right? So crates are basically the greatest training tool I can possibly think of, because it gives me the luxury of being consistent. And the best way to train a dog is to be consistent. It is actually almost impossible to train a dog without consistency. So that consistency piece is kept very, very, very accurate by using the crate. So let me give you an example. I don't actually know all the reasons why or when Clooney barks, but so I don't. This is a hypothetical situation that you might relate to. Let's say that Clooney likes to look out the window all day, and he barks at things that walk by, dogs, people, you name it. So Clooney is not looking out the window because he likes to, if that's what he's doing, which maybe he's not. Clooney is looking out the window because he's guarding your house, which is a very stressful state of mind. And he is looking for suspicious movement on your property, which is territorial behavior, and it's a stressful state of mind. So if you want that to stop, which it would be much healthier for Clooney if we stop that behavior, I am going to teach him the place command, which is going to be that raised cot that you saw in the video of Hootie, and he's going to learn how to relax on that place board. So in the living room, he's going to be on place instead of looking out the window. And if he hears something and runs out the window, I'm going to teach you guys how to call him off of that window, put him back on place, and basically repeat over and over and over again. And that process teaches the dog to stay in place and ignore what's going on outside because it's none of their concern. And this decreases stress immensely. It helps dogs relax more. It'll also curb anxiety. So that's an example of how I might go about solving excessive barking inside the home. Well, if I train him and he does really, really well, and I put him on his place board, and he's like totally relaxed and like great, but then I forget, and 15 minutes later, I am in the shower and he's in the living room still, and a person goes by and he barks and goes crazy, and I have nothing I can do about it because I didn't even know, or I was in the shower and there, I didn't even know he was barking. Then he was given an opportunity to go through the exact behavior I'm trying to change, right? So that lack of consistency will prevent him from ever fully giving up that barking at the window. So instead, I would train him, be very attentive to him and present with him while he is out of his crate so that I can make sure to address that issue. And then when I'm done, I'm going to put him in his crate, and then that way I can go do my thing and don't worry about what he's doing and whether or not he's messing up the training. Okay? At the same time, he's in his crate sleeping, right? He's going to go to sleep. And when they sleep, they retain information. So that sleep portion is not just great for anxiety and that den, but it's also it also reinforces the training. It creates long-term memory over time to the point where now the dog starts to actually have this new habit that their brain is actually rewired. And that's how you can actually change behavior. But when you have these moments of inconsistency, he's been home for a week, he's doing so well, let's not put him in his crate. And all of a sudden you run out to the backyard to go do something and you hear Clooney barking at the front window. Don't cut corners just because they're doing well. That's another piece of advice. So if in a week he comes home and he's doing so well, don't play that scenario out because his brain is not rewired yet. He's not ready for that. So what you're going to have to get yourself into a habit of when your boys come home is when you're not paying attention to them and they're not in the middle of training, they go in their crate. Now this is going to be really challenging for you because you have 2 dogs, so that means you guys are going to be working extra hard here. And they're going to be put in their crates a lot. And it's going to be really hard. But as you can tell from that consistency piece, this is what's going to keep your training together. It's going to go downhill super quickly if you don't have that crate to keep things consistent, to keep them separated, and to get their sleep caught up and that memory retainment from getting more sleep inside their crate. All right. I was thinking about making this a 2-part video, but since apparently I do have a lot to say about the crate, we're 23 minutes in. I'm just going to go ahead and get straight to crate etiquette. Now that you know the importance of the crate, I want to seize this moment. Clooney is really, really, really pushy about getting out of this crate, so I wanted to use this opportunity to show you how to address this when he comes home. So I have this crate covered right now so that he can relax better and not worry so much about all the other dogs walking by. I'm going to lift this up. I'm just going to take this out real quick. See how much he loved his breakfast this morning, huh? So, when I come to this crate, now you're not going to, hopefully not have to open it up for any reason, but when I come to this crate, I want you to watch him go through this. This is where a lot of people will just open it up, but what I'm seeing is a dog that's trying to boss me to open the crate by pawing at it, and he's very anxious. And actually this is great. This is better than it was this morning. So this is really good. The fact that he just sat, that took a lot longer to get this morning. Both of your dogs are incredible, by the way. He just has a lot more anxiety. he's already catching on so quickly. It's really neat. But yeah, see all this pawing and then nosing. He nudges the latches. This is very poodle-esque, by the way. All this is very bossy behavior, very pushy. And so I like to think of forward movement as a reward. So if I move forward when he's scratching and pawing and poking and whining and all that, then I'm basically rewarding that behavior. And I only want to reward the behavior that I'm looking for. So I'm going to wait until he settles down, and I'm going to grab the latch when he does. So right there. See how that's actually, he's still really worked up. You can see his tail's freaking out in the back. And I can always tell when they're really worked up, when they just can't barely sit still. They're sitting for a second because they feel like that's going to get them that reward. But then they can't because they're so anxious, so they pop right back up. So this is what you're going to probably experience at first. And he's going to be a lot better when he comes home than this. Kind of wanted you to see him at his worst, just in case he decides to throw all the punches at home. Which, by the way, Hootie didn't do any of this. He just automatically sat and waited. He's incredible. But now Hootie's whining. Hootie was not vocal at all in his crate until Clooney came here, so that tells me that influence is definitely there. Hootie! Quiet! But whenever he gets worked up, so does Hootie does too. So I'm going to wait and see if I can get a little bit more calm out of this guy before I open the crate door. Alright, so I'm going to put my finger on the latch. And I gotta get this stool over here. Hold on 1 second. If I put my hand on the latch and he breaks the sit or paws and pokes and nudges, I'm going to take my hand off of the latch. So I'm basically, this is really, really challenging for his brain, by the way, because what he has learned is to poke, paw, and nudge to get things. That's very obvious. And so for him to have to process that that's not going to get the reward of forward movement, that's a lot of thought for him. He's got to really work through this. So this is actually extremely mentally taxing on a dog, which is good for them. It's good. Dogs' mental stimulation is healthy. And we're actually working on calming the anxiety down, so this is extra healthy. But he's like someone who's learning to meditate for the first time. He can't sit still. It's super hard. So this is a long process, and it will not be this long when he goes home, just so you know. I don't want you to feel discouraged by the length of time this takes, because he's going to be so much better when he comes home. But I think it's just for training purposes and kind of seeing the process. I think this is good for you guys to see and see him work through. So I grab the latch, and see, he just can't. That is just so thrilling for him when I grab that latch. He has to break his sit and squirm all over the place. So I'm just going to keep deterring that forward movement until he can better contain himself. Sometimes I think he also thinks that he's going to stare at me until he wills me to do what he wants, which is also not something that's going to happen. You can see why this crate is a self-soothing tool, because it contains him to the point where, and I don't put toys and bones and stuff in my crate, so I don't want you to either, because this is really just about him learning how to calm himself down. He's excited. He wants to go outside and he wants to stretch his legs and run and do dog things. He just had a couple-hour nap, so he's ready to go. but it's very healthy for a dog to learn that they don't have to be this worked up about things in order, and life doesn't have to constantly be this anxiety fest. And so that's just one of the reasons why I love crates. It just really helps with that self-soothing side of things. Teaching patience too. Oh, that's beautiful. All right, so now I'm getting somewhere. So now I'm going to unlatch it because he didn't break his sit, but there he broke his sit, so I'm going to relatch it. It's going to take a while. I see a lot of my job is just about patience and waiting. It's interesting, he did this morning in half the time, so I don't know if he knows mom and dad are watching. They're not, it's just the camera. See how he's staring at the latch right there? I'm trying real hard not to open it when he stares at it. There's something about his eyes, it's like, I don't know if he stares at you guys a lot and then it's like, what do you want, buddy? But it seems very bossy. So I try to wait until he's not looking. And then that sound made him stand up. So I'm going to back up and start over again. It's pretty incredible how much, how much he's testing everything. And, this is really common with dogs. This is his second day here, so this is not surprising to me at all. This is typical behavior. What actually surprises me more than anything is that Hootie didn't do it. So I'm not unlatching it because he's fixated on it. So I'm going to wait until he quits trying to will this thing open with his eyes. This is a stressful process for dogs. It's like I'm almost free shaping them. I'm waiting until he comes up with the behavior on his own, and then I'm rewarding it with forward movement. And then when I disagree with his behavior, I back up and start over again. So it's really, really, really mindful and exhausting in its own way. Good job, dude. Here's my neighbor wheeling her trash can down her driveway right now. So I can actually just redirect his attention by acting like I'm going to grab the latch. And he's like, oh, I don't want to bark. I'd rather get out of this crate. I don't usually say sit or anything when they're in their crate. because I don't have a tool on him, and so I don't want to ask for things that I can't follow through with. So if I say sit, I want to be able to make that happen, and in his crate, I cannot make that happen. So this is why this is a quiet process. I'm just simply waiting for him to physically, and mentally go into the state of mind that I'm looking for, and then I'll move forward as the reward. You're going to see, I guess, a very defiant Hootie, because this is, we're going on 8 minutes now of this, and it took all of 3 this morning, so I guess he's going to really test his limits today. One of the things you can definitely see is that as this process goes on, that the more punches he throws, and I'm just being consistent. That's all I'm doing right now. I haven't changed anything. I'm just being consistent. So what you'll notice is that the more punches that I throw, or that he tries to throw, the more I just maintain this calm, neutral composure and stay consistent. Actually, he's not behaving the way I've taught him already, which he obviously, there's obviously a lack of clarity in that what I've taught him, so I'm just trying to stay consistent. But it's definitely obvious that he's calmed down tremendously just in the 9 minutes that I've been doing this. This process is, he's still defying me or throwing punches or just trying to get what he wants out of the situation as much as he can, but he is calming down as the process goes on. So this level of patience is not the easiest thing to do with dogs. It is for me now, but I mean for the average person it's not. But when you have that in you to go, I'm just gonna wait, the dog's almost more exhausted just from the patience that the handler is exuding than anything. Usually with a person I can push their buttons and whine and squirm and poke and nudge, and they just can't handle it to the point where they give up. This is hard. I really don't care if he lays down, by the way. It's not even, he's doing that all on his own. I just want him to sit. Just remain in a position, quit poking or pushing yourself forward every time I undo the latch. Ooh, the wind is blowing out there. You know what's kind of cool about dogs, though? I mean, this part's, obviously, it's geez, man, don't you just want to get out of your crate? But just the progress of things, in a couple days, he's just going to know what to do, and I'm not even going to have to do a lot of repetitions, and it's, it's cool to watch dogs go from this to, I got it, and I really would like to get out of here, so I'm just gonna do it, because my reward will be greater than the defiance that I'm gonna attempt. So he stayed in a down when I unlatched the top. And then when I went to go reach for the bottom latch is when he got up. So that's it. I'm actually not going to relatch this. I'm just gonna now focus on this lower latch here. So hopefully that makes sense. It's like, he actually maintained exactly what I was looking for at the first latch. So I don't actually have to backtrack now because I got what I wanted. So now I'm going to the second latch. And this is what makes plastic crates a little bit easier because there's only one latch. But now I'm going to go to the second one. I'm not going to unlatch it right now because he's staring at it. Trying to will it open. Success. So both latches were successfully opened without him breaking a position. And then, it wasn't until I started to open the door that he got up. So once he saw that door starting to open is when he got up. So you see how I break it down into steps? It's like, for everything I don't want, I'm not going to move forward, and I may even move back. And for everything that I do want, I'm going to reward you by moving forward and giving you what you want. So now we're going to be focused on the door. I'm going to wait for him to go back into his sit, and then we're going to work on him staying in that sit with the door open. This is going to be permission-based at the end of this long session. And that what I'm looking for from him is either a sit or a down with the door open, and I will give him permission when he can come out of his crate. So that's the end goal here. So he's trying to poke his nose over it. So I went to close it, and then when I went to kind of back him up with the crate door, and then that actually sprung him up into a sit. So now I'm closing the door again, and we're going to start over. You know what's crazy about this too? Is that he's going to be so much calmer when he comes out of his crate. Even going outside, he's going to be less likely to bark because he has calmed down so much since we started. He's no longer like pitter-pattering and like flailing around and wagging excessively and whining. Like, he's calmed down so much. And I think we've been doing this for what? Goodness gracious. I don't even know how long. A long frickin' time. 16 minutes? So by the time I take him outside, like, he's even less likely to bark at things and stuff when he sees them because he's going to be in such a calmer state by the time we get out there just by starting crate etiquette this way. So I'm going to do a separate video for you on door etiquette. This one's is just specifically going to be on crate. But the reason why I was going to make it a two-part series is because I was going to throw in door etiquette as well. But I think I need to go work other dogs. We've been going for 45 minutes. So I guess I missed my window of opportunity to see if I could keep that down, But I'm going to do another one on door etiquette because door etiquette is the next piece of the puzzle and setting the tone going outside and coming back inside. So I'm going to end this video as soon as I get him out of his crate, but when I'm done with this, I'm going to go work on practicing proper door etiquette so he's as this patient and calm going in and out doorways as well. Those two things in combination with themselves set the tone for any activity that you're going to do. So if you want your dog to be calm and relaxed when they go outside and start to see things in a calm and relaxed way, it requires crate and door etiquette every single time you go in and out of door in order to maintain that kind of cool and collected state of mind. And they see stimulus better. Stimulus isn't as crazy and overwhelming to them because they're in a much calmer, relaxed state of mind. So I'd say crate and door etiquette are two of the most important parts of my training. I think that dogs can get far in so many different ways, but I don't think that they can get there furthest unless they have proper door and crate etiquette. So if he attempts to edge forward and try to get out of this crate, I'm just gonna I kind of waft it into them, like that. I have to add a little punch to his because he's extra pushy. So sometimes, like, I couldn't do that to Hootie. He'd be like, oh my gosh, why are you doing that to me? But with this guy, he's so pushy, I have to kind of match that intensity with the push of the door. So this is what's going to teach him how to sit with the door open. It's that wafting that I'm doing. You see, I'm not just closing the door, I'm actually kind of wafting it into his face. And this is what it looks like. This is the end result. He did it. Now I'm going to leash him up because he's not off-leash reliable yet. Let's go. And we're going to go ahead and go outside and do doors. Thanks for your time, guys. This was a long one.